Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight for this important town hall on gun violence and hate crimes. My name is Stacey Mars, and I am proud to serve as the chair of the Greenville County Democratic Party. Thank you. Before we get started, would you please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're here tonight because we know that thoughts and prayers alone are not enough anymore. We're here because we believe in action and in holding our leaders accountable for protecting our communities from senseless gun violence and hate. We're especially honored tonight to be joined virtually by a true statesman and civil rights leader, Congressman Jim Clyburn. Congressman Clyburn has spent his career fighting for justice, equity, and common sense solutions that save lives. He has been a driving force behind the effort to close the Charleston loophole, the very loophole that allowed a mass murderer to purchase a firearm used to kill 9 Black parishioners at Mother Emanuel in Charleston on July 17, 2015. His leadership on this issue has been unwavering, and we're grateful to have his voice with us this evening. Before we get to Congressman Clyburn, I want to recognize our Democratic state legislators, Representative Wendell Jones and Chandra Dillard. Would you please stand? Thank you. Thank you for standing with us tonight and consistently fighting for responsible gun safety legislation in the State House. While none of our Republican legislators accepted the invitation to be here, they'll be hearing from us because our voices deserve to be heard. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for speaking up. And now it is my great honor to welcome Congressman James Clyburn, a leader whose lifetime of service has helped the arc of history move toward justice. Congressman, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for having me. I hope I'm being heard. I want to begin by apologizing for having to step off of a meeting and speaking to you in this way. But we are marking up the Homeland Security Appropriations Bill, and we plan to be marking up for some time to come. So I may have to run away for a vote, but just in case, I'm staying near the room. As you probably know, I'm sure most, if not all, the people there, we are celebrating an anniversary, I should say commemorating an anniversary this year, the 10th, of the Emmanuel 9 murders, 9 people, most of whom I knew very, very well, some extremely well. I still can't quite wrap my mind around that incident, but it did occur there in Charleston, in my congressional district, to my constituents. And this year, on the 17th of June, I was in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, meeting with the AME bishops from all over the country, not just in the country, all of the AME bishops from Africa, from the Caribbean. We were all in Oklahoma City on the 17th. And I spoke with them about this legislation, this incident, and where we are today. I shared with them that I had reintroduced the legislation to close the Charleston loophole, but I also said to them that I had no trepidations or either expectations about the future of that bill. It has passed the House twice, but both times it's when Democrats were in the majority. It's not going to pass the House this time, and it never has passed the Senate. Never has even gotten a hearing in the Senate. But we know that in order for us to get this bill through the House again, we need to have a Democratic majority in the House. You think it's time out for thoughts and prayers. It's also time out for just going through the motions. We want to pass this legislation, and we want to pass other legislation as well. So to do that, we're going to have to change the makeup of the House. Just that simple. And what we will do if we get this bill passed, we will be expanding from 3 days to 10 days the amount of time allowed for a background check. Now, this 3 days has always been problematic because one little error on the computer or one little lie by the applicant could very well cause a delay in the background check. In Dylan Roof's case, he I don't know if he gave out the wrong information or if it was keyed in wrong. What I do know is, in some way, West Columbia became Columbia, or vice versa, and that delayed the background check. Now, he was astute enough to know the law. He may have calculated on giving the wrong information when he made the application. I don't know. I do know this. He was smart enough to research the history of Emmanuel Church. He researched the history of 4 or 5 other churches. He had a list from which he made his decision about which church to carry out his attempt to start a race war. And he picked Emmanuel. And by his own admission, it was because of its historic significance. He saw it as being the most historic of the churches, and therefore he saw it as being the church that would engender the emotions that he thought would be necessary to start a race war. So if he had the intuition to do that kind of research, he may have given the wrong information when he applied for the gun. We know that after the 3 days expired, he went back and got the gun. And we also know that several days later, I've heard 5, I don't know if that's true or not, but several days later, they found the error. But by this time, he had the gun. That's why my legislation is so important. He would expand from 3 to 10 days, the amount of time for a background check. And if for some reason the background check is not completed in the 10 days, it also allows for the FBI to do an enhanced background check. And if those 2 10-day periods were to expire without a resolution, at that point, the person could get the gun. Now, one of the things we have to keep in mind, 92% of these purchases the background check is done within the 3-day period. Only about 8% of the people who apply for a gun would be impacted by this legislation. And I'm not too sure that if 8% of the people who are trying to purchase a gun got something in their backgrounds or something that will lead to some enhanced or further investigation into the background, that inconvenience, what's so inconvenient about that? It would seem to me anybody wanting to purchase a gun for the proper reason, that is what the Second Amendment guarantees you, and that's your protection of your home and property. If that's what you want to get the gun for, then waiting 10 days rather than 3 is going to prevent you from achieving the proper Second Amendment rights. I don't think so. So anybody that needs to have a gun quickly, it seems to me, is a person that may not need to have a gun at all. And so I think that when we thinking about what we need to do to pass this legislation, let me just say, when you vet the information, when you get enough people involved, and you get the question out before them in the proper way, you might be able to overcome this opposition. The reason I say that is because that has happened. You remember these what you call bump stock or whatever it is that we were able to get outlawed with Joe Biden's Safer Communities Act. We passed legislation to do some of this already when people thought we could. We need to do more than just limit magazine capacity of magazines and the building or making of untraceable guns. We did that with the Safer Communities Act, and we can do more. But we have got to have a better composition sitting in the Congress. Now, the Senate has the filibuster rule. There are 100 people in the Senate. You need 51 votes to pass it. But because of the filibuster, you need 60 votes to overcome a filibuster, cut off debate so they can get to the vote, which means that we got to do something about the Senate as well. So even though you get it passed in the House, as we've done before, if we don't have 60 votes in the Senate, it could be subject to a filibuster, and we still won't get it done. This year or next year in South Carolina, we get a chance at making a decision on 6 House seats and a decision on 1 Senate seat. So South Carolina need to get busy right now preparing for this question to be a part of next year's debate. And I can't think of a better way for us to commemorate the life and legacy, and I do mean legacy, of the Emanuel Nine than dealing with this issue in next year's debate. The vast majority of American people are all for common sense gun legislation. The vast majority. We need to make that a part of our campaign next year and make sure that the people we vote for are people who will honor the life and legacy of the Emanuel Nine and all others across this country that are similarly situated. So thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your commemoration, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate you taking some time out for us this evening. And you kind of alluded to some of the questions we have. So What I'll start with is you reintroduced the enhanced backgrounds check bill for the fifth time, and you talked about how it's passed the House, but it's never gotten any time in the Senate. So we know that we need to flip the Senate and get that where it's past the filibuster. Is there any other change that you think needs to be done, or any strategy outside of that that we can do to make this happen?
To be honest with you, I don't think so. Because if you were to do something like put together a discharge petition to get it on the House floor, that will only apply to the House. You still would have to go to the Senate, and it would meet the same fate this time as it met the last two times it got to the Senate. So I just believe that the only thing for us to do now is to make this a part of our discussions in next year's elections. And really, it won't be the only thing, but I think we need to really have a discussion of this because people are interested in this. I just don't think we've ever done the proper discussion of it in South Carolina, and I think we need to do it.
So would you think something like town halls, like what we're doing tonight, might be a good way to have that discussion, or how do you think that discussion takes place?
I think it should be in town halls or uh, maybe just various panel discussions. I think that part of us um, really rebuilding in South Carolina with a more progressive agenda is to put this on the agenda for everything that we do. It doesn't have to be a town hall meeting. It could be just a regular meeting of community uh, groups. Most towns, even small towns, have neighborhood groups. They have neighborhood watch. Just put this on the agenda every time that you possibly can, no matter how small the group. I grew up in the parsonage, and we had prayer meetings on Wednesday nights and Friday nights. Sometimes you show up for prayer meeting and only be 3 or 4 people there. And my dad, I've heard him say it so many times, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, we got to do that. Uh, so no matter how small the group, have an agenda for them. Now, we don't have to load them up with everything we've got if you don't have but 3 or 4 people there. But I do believe that we're going to have to take this issue and maybe 2 or 3 other issues and make them the focus of everything that we do when we're having these meetings. And don't worry about covering the waterfront. Just get 2 or 3 things that people are really interested in. You know, I used to say, I still say it everywhere I go. When I talk to a group, I have 3 points that I want to make. Number one, I want to be able to say to them, this is what this piece of legislation will do for you. Secondly, this is what this legislation will do for your family. And third, this is what this legislation will do for your community. And I think if we boil our meetings down to what we're doing for the individual, what we're doing for families, and what we're doing for the communities, and keep everything within the realm of those 3 things, I think we'll do better connecting with people. And that is something we should do all over.
Absolutely. Thank you. I have one last question for you. I
Sure.
know you have to get back. So when it comes to the Second Amendment, we know people they have their opinions on those, on the Second Amendment. So could you give me, I guess, your opinion on why you think the Second Amendment seems so sacrosanct to a certain segment of America, more so than the First Amendment?
Because we've allowed the gun lobby to turn this in to an issue far beyond protecting the class. You know, everybody want to protect their home and their property, and that's what this is all about. But even Scalia, who a lot of people say was one of, if not the most conservative, and I mean this conservative now, I'm not doing this in terms of race. A lot of people, I think, confuse the two. We've had some racist Supreme Court justices in the past. I'm thinking of Taney of Maryland being one of them. But on just conservatism, originalism, Justice Scalia was as close to the most conservative you'll ever get. He saw Second Amendment limits and expressed that in his writings. And so we've gotten beyond that. And people are purchasing guns to protect themselves from things that don't exist. Mm-hmm. Dylan Roof purchased a gun because he's making his contribution to starting a race war. This has become a big racial thing with too many people, and I think that's why you see much more respect being offered for the Second Amendment than even for the First Amendment. And it seems to me that is much more fundamental to what the democracy is all about, the First Amendment protection. But people have gone crazy over the Second Amendment because people have stoked fears and all kinds of ghosts in people's communities and in their lives that just aren't there. But that's what people believe. And reverting back to my childhood again, in that parsonage, as a man thinketh, so is he. When people think this, that's what it is. And not much you can do about it. But what we can do, as Martin Luther King Jr. would say, we can get some control over their actions. We can't do a whole lot about their emotions. Can't make them love you or like you. But we can pass laws that will, let's just say, control their actions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight, Congressman. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and good luck. Look forward to seeing you in person real soon.
My name is Laura Haight. I'm the president of Democratic Women, Greenville County. Excuse me. And I want to welcome all of you to tonight's event. We do have a couple of changes. Some of you probably saw the email that went out, but Senator Carl Allen is not able to be with us tonight. His brother died, and today was the funeral, so I thought that was a pretty good reason not to be here. And we send our condolences to him and his family. And Malcolm Graham, the brother of Cynthia Graham Hurd, who was killed at Mother Emanuel, he had a developing conflict that came up, so he can't be with us. But we have excellent speakers, and we have all of you and your questions and your comments, so we are going to power forward, and it's going to be a really interesting evening, I hope. So one thing, some of you picked up a card, an index card, when you signed in. If you have a question that you would like to ask, write it out on the card, and then hold your card up. Doesn't matter when you do that. We have people who are watching for those cards, and they'll come pick it up and give it to these ladies over here who are going to sort through them and make sure we get to all the topics. So, okay. So to kick this off, I'd like to introduce our co-sponsors from Moms Demand and ask them to say a few words to get us going. And before I do that, I do want to thank Stacey and the GCDP for being a co-sponsor and for getting us our keynote speaker, Representative Clyburn. So Dorothy, Lori, do you?
Thank you. I'm Dorothy Duncan. I am the lead for South Greenville Moms Demand Action, and Lori Quattlebaum is here. She has graciously taken on the responsibility of leading the Greenville group, and we're thrilled to have her. So Lori's going to talk to you a little bit at the end to let people know what you can do for some actions. I just wanted to go over really quickly. The Charleston loophole gets very confusing depending upon how much you read about it and where it's written. So I just want to reiterate some of the things that Representative Clyburn went over and hopefully not repeat stuff. But if you purchase a firearm from a federally licensed gun dealer, you need to pass a background check. Not everybody who purchases a gun goes through a federally licensed gun dealer, but that definition has been expanded because of the Bipartisan Safer Community. Actually, it was the final step from an ATF ruling. And they expanded the definition of who actually sells guns and qualifies as a dealer. So that's expanded quite a bit from what it was in the past, which is a good thing. So more people are required to have background checks done. As Representative Clyburn commented, greater than 90% of the checks are completed by the FBI in 3 days. The majority of these actually only take a few minutes to complete. It is so quick to go through here because it's in the system. They all talk to the same database, and it really happens pretty quickly. After the check is completed, then the dealer can go ahead and give the gun to the purchaser. If the gun check takes longer than 3 days, the dealer has the option to give the gun to the buyer before it's completed. This is what's been known as the Charleston loophole, as we know, named after the Emanuel 9 and AME church shootings, that whole incident, because that shooter was able to get the gun, even though, because he didn't pass within that 3 days, the dealer that he bought it through went ahead and gave him the gun. And we all know what happened as a result of that. Now, whether that would have made a difference or not, we don't know, but we do know that in most cases, background checks are positive. Background checks that are not completed in 3 days are 4 times more likely to be denied. That number is approximately 5% every year. So it's a very small amount of people. 93% of Americans support universal background checks for all gun sales. And another survey showed that 89% of Republicans and 89% of gun owners support them. So it's a very strong. The people who don't support them are our legislators. And that's what we need to figure out. Why is that true? They're not representing us. Experts in criminology, public health, and the law consider background checks the most effective ways to reduce gun deaths. 22 states have passed laws extending that 3-day waiting period. I've got a map. If you're curious what the states are, I'm going to put it over there on a table that we've got with some information about safe gun storage as well. And just for your information, I found this kind of incredible. In 2024 in South Carolina, there were 352,199 firearm background checks completed. Out of that number, 2,206 were denied, which is about 1%. So it's a very small amount. And those are the people that we're allegedly protecting by not passing this law, their rights. What about the rights of people who were killed? And I have to say, and this is just a personal comment, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. I have asked myself, living in South Carolina now, what would have happened if a Black man walked into a white church and shot 9 white people? would we be sitting here today? Would we have that? Just ask yourselves that question.
I think we know the answer to that question. It's a good one. Excuse me. Our next speaker is Melody McFadden. Melody has had private conversations with Barack Obama, among others. And as a national speaker for Moms Demand Action, she regularly lobbies our national elected officials. Last year, she spoke at the Democratic National Convention in prime time, mind you. But I imagine she would trade any of those experiences to have watched her mother grow old or her niece get married and raise a family. And these simple pleasures were denied to her and have brought her here today. So we're very happy to have Melody here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Laura, for having me. And she's absolutely correct. I would give anything to have my loved ones here with me. I would give anything for my mother to have met her grandsons and her granddaughter, for her to know that she now has great-grandchildren, but she missed all of that. My niece didn't get married. She didn't get to go into the military. She was due to go into the military in December and travel the world because that's what she wanted to do. But because of a senseless trip to Myrtle Beach with her friends and cousins to watch the motorcycle parades, fighting happened on the beach. I recently spoke to the Dems for a breakfast meeting last weekend, and I told them they don't fight the way we used to. We used to have those fights. We went down the street, we punched each other in the nose, we knocked each other in the dirt, and then we got back up, and tomorrow we were playing again. But it's a whole different league now. When my niece was killed on Myrtle Beach, she was killed along with two other young men. My niece, by the way, is Sandy Patrice Geddes Barnwell. She was killed along with Devontae Dantzler, who was 21, 2 days before he went to the beach. He went to celebrate his birthday. He was his mother's only child. Jamie Williams, he was 25 when he went to the beach. He went to the beach and left at home a 1 and a 2-year-old that will not know their father because he was taken at the beach. When the young people started to fight, they whipped out weapons. After all of that was over, the 4 young people that were shot, because one was shot and he lived. He was shot 5 times, but he lived. When they were all back in the regular community and we had meetings with parents and groups of people that had been on the beach, we found an unusual thing. And it was unusual to me because I raised 5 kids and a bonus child. I can't imagine going to a store and purchasing a gun and putting it in the hands of my 15 or 16 or 17-year-old child. But some of the mothers that were sitting in the room said they purchased the guns for their children. That's called a straw purchase. It's happening all over the place. We have to learn that we can equip our children better. We can teach them about conflict resolution. We can do other things besides putting a weapon in their hands when they're not mature enough to know how to make a decision. I call them so often the microwave and the video game generation. They think because I'm doing it fast, I'm doing it quick, and I pull this trigger, I can boom, hit the button and get another life. It's not that way. My niece had 1 life. She didn't come home from the beach. She's my sister's only child. You see, she was a girl that was born after 8 boys in my family, including 4 of mine. So we love Sandy. Sandy intended to come back home that night, and she didn't. That could change if we put some common sense gun laws in place. What's it gonna take for us to decide that it's up to all of us, the grown-ups in this room? I'm not talking about the little children or the young teenagers in this room. What's it gonna take for us to do what's necessary to protect our children, protect our families, and protect our community? As the congressman just mentioned, that's why he's working. So it's up to all of us to do the same. You see, it's very close to me when I talk about these subjects, because my niece, she's on that picture that's in front of this podium. My mother is on that picture in front of that podium. But there are a lot of other pictures on that picture. All of those people are family members. L'Oreal was 18 years old and went to Chicago with her identical twin sister to celebrate her birthday and graduating from high school. She was shot in the back of the head. Louis got out of a vehicle here in Greenville at an apartment complex. He was 18 years old. He was his parents' only child. He too shot in the chest. He was told, oops, wrong person. 15-year-old person shot him. Where does 15-year-old get the gun? That's the questions we need to ask. What are we gonna do to prepare ourselves to be safer? There are others on that picture, but it's up to all of us to do something about it. There's a young lady sitting in the audience, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying this. Her name is Tony. She was in her neighborhood, walking to her daughter's house, and she was shot several times by teenagers. Where did they get the weapons? It's up to all of us. I know that we're living in perilous times. I know that we are worried to an extent. I know that some days when we go to bed, we don't know what's going to happen the next morning when we wake up and listen to the news. I'm aware of all that. But guess what? I'm also an Army veteran. When my mother was killed, I had to go serve because I had 3 young people that I had to help my grandmother raise. So I believe that during this perilous time, there's no time for us to sit and cry about it and cry woe and complain and sit and do nothing and wait until a Democrat is in the office during the next season. No, this is a time of preparation. I see a young man that was sitting near me. He has on his veteran's hat. I'm an Army veteran. Guess what? We don't wait until the battle starts to get prepared. We prepare in times like this. This is when you start doing something. This is when action is required of you. You get ready for the battle during these times. And when the battle happens, then you're ready for the fight. But you can't wait until the battle starts to start getting ready. It's up to us now. You know what we can do? We can call 5 people. We can go knock on our neighbors' doors. We can ask questions. We can talk to the mailman when he stops to say, I have a package for you. You can ask questions. What's wrong with that? One of the programs that Moms Demand Action runs, and it's very close to my heart, I too am a gun owner. I'm a responsible gun owner. I secure my weapon. That's what I am. And that program is called Be Smart. It means secure storage. It means for you to ask somebody. My 7-year-old granddaughter is with me today. She'll be 8 next month. She wants me to say that. When she's going to someone else's house to play or to hang out, I want to know if they have weapons. I want to know if they're securing them. I want to know. And I don't want it in your nighttime, on your bedside table or under your pillow, because children find those things in your closet. Secure your weapons. It's nothing wrong with that. You see, it's up to us to protect them and their future. I have a 10-year-old granddaughter, and she came out of my room one night and showed me a video that she made, and she put it on TikTok. And it was after I had picked her up from school because she had a panic attack or was about to have one. She was really having one. And it was about the armed gun type, active shooter drills. Help me. But those active shooter drills, there was a person, and I don't know what he was thinking, but he went around and was knocking on the doors with something, and they thought a shooter was actually there. And when she went home, she made this TikTok video, and she said, adults, it's time for you to start adulting. It's your job to protect us. Our job is to go to school and to have fun and to do our schoolwork, but it's your job to protect us. And she's absolutely correct. It's our job to make common sense gun laws. It's our job to secure weapons. It's our job to keep weapons out of the hands of children, out of the hands of criminals, out of the hands of those that are a danger to themselves and others. That's our job. And we're hearing it from the mouths of our children. We should do that without being told by them. But if we have to hear it when their blood is crying from the sand, then woe be unto us for doing nothing. It's up to us to prepare now. It's up to us to put our boots on the ground. It's up to us to do something now. And I implore all of you, make sure everybody you possibly can talk to is registered to vote. Because when they choose to do nothing, including listen to their constituents, we need to vote them out.
And every time I hear Melody tell her story, I'm amazed that she can do it without crying, because I always cry. Thank you, Melody, for that. That was powerful and excellent discussion points for a little bit later. In preparation for tonight's program, I asked Representative Dillard if it would be possible to get a readout of the gun legislation that had been proposed in the legislature since the Charleston shootings. The other day, she came through, as she always does, and sent me a 398-page PDF. As I reviewed the first 10 pages of it, I found a couple of things that you might be interested in. Following the passage last session of the constitutional carry legislation, the legislature passed several related bills. With some limitation, one expunges and dismisses charges against anyone with a case of unlawful handgun possession pending. So we're retroactively now giving them the right to carry a gun, even if they've already been arrested and charged with it. That became law, overriding the governor's veto. A bill was proposed to ensure that the government doesn't keep any record of firearm ownership. Another bill, I love this, would give convicted felons the right to have firearms, but only for hunting. And my question is, since we aren't going to keep any records of who owns a gun, how are we going to keep track of who's using it to hunt? So there's that. Yet another bill would remove restrictions on carrying firearms in high schools and at college athletic events. This is something that was restricted previously, even by holders of a concealed weapons permit. Other than the first bill I mentioned, none of these bills progressed. But what also didn't progress were any bills to make negligent storage of a firearm a crime. to make it a crime to have unsecured firearms or unsupervised use of a firearm by a child. And number of red flag bills have been introduced and gone nowhere. And of course, the countless efforts to close the Charleston loophole that have also failed. One of my favorites is a bill that, among its provisions, requires that someone buying a gun must be specifically told that it is unlawful to leave a firearm within easy reach of a child. That didn't pass either. That was obviously a step too far. And that's in a state with one of the highest rates of pediatric death by firearms. From 2003 to 2020, our state ranked 40% above the national rate in this area, with 55% of the 540 children who died were in incidents classified as homicide. In the past 5 years, there have been 75 mass shootings. That's a shooting where four people or more are killed in our state. And I've heard people say, well, we don't have any mass shootings. Apparently, we have quite a few. That's 15 a year, 17 a year. In 2021, 71 children died by gunfire, and we had the 11th highest rate of gun deaths in the country. The following year, we had 74 children die, and we moved up to 9th in the country. Last year, we were 6th in the country. So clearly, we aren't learning anything from our mistakes. Why? And this is the point of today, right? Why is that? Year after year, polling tells us that South Carolinians don't want the wild, wild West culture that the legislature is promulgating. In 2022, the nonprofit Third Way conducted a poll with a Republican polling firm, GS Strategy. It found 79% of South Carolina voters support red flag laws. 78% said it was too easy to get a gun in the United States, with 51% saying it was much too easy. 64% of Republicans shared that overall sentiment, as did 64% of self-described conservatives and 72% of gun owners. A year earlier, a Winthrop University poll found 80% of Republicans and 83% of Democrats support closing the loophole and extending the time period to 10 days. Poll director Scott Huffman said at the time, and this mirrors what Dorothy said before, and I quote, "There is no division by party on this. Where the division is within the party elites and elected officials and campaign leaders, not among regular people." That's us, the regular people. Well, except for you guys. And so there we are. We have legislators pushing one of the most aggressive pro-gun agendas in the country in a state where the vast majority of its very own voters want more restrictions, more protection, and less violence. I don't know how to make sense of that, to be perfectly honest. And I'm not really sure I know how to change the course. There are two aspects to the issue on the table today. The first is emotional. The horror of what happened in Charleston never leaves us. It is hard to get the image of 9 people shot dead at prayer out of our heads. Or 26 to 7-year-olds cut to ribbons by automatic weapons, surrounded by coloring books and building blocks in their Sandy Hook classrooms. Or the bodies of 50 dead and 500 injured in a plaza in Las Vegas by a sniper shooting down on an outdoor summer concert. Second is practical and political. What can we do about it? We had hoped that 1 or 2 of our Republican legislators would join us today, but unfortunately, that's not the case. We invited the entire delegation and followed up with phone calls to their offices. Only 1 or 2 of the 21 of them actually bothered to respond at all. But that's okay. We have really the best ones are with us here today. So I'd like for both of them to come up and tell us their perspective on where we are what it's like in the back rooms of the legislature as we're trying to hammer out some kinds of agreements, and what they think it's going to take to make change. I know the answer to that, and it involves electing more Democrats. So, flip one damn seat and all of that. So first we're going to hear from Representative Chandra Dillard, and then after that, Representative Wendell Jones. And after their remarks, we'll open up the floor to your comments and any questions you've sent over. So Chandra?
Well, good evening, everyone. Feel like we're all friends and family here. I want to thank the Democratic women and Moms Demand Action for having this important discussion tonight, and for commemorating our 9 South Carolinians, that time that we lost those 9 South Carolinians, because it should always be at the top of mind as we try to do this work. So I'm honored to be here along with my colleague and Ms. McFadden to have this discussion, and all of you. And so I wanted to just talk a little bit about well, first I want to say this to Ms. McFadden: you have incredible strength. Let me just say that. And for those who have lost loved ones who have been subject to gun violence, I know that even in your activism, even in counseling, it's still hard to walk a path. I'm sure there are bad days. But in our humanity, we want to wrap our arms around you and work with you to find the answer, so that no one else will be able to witness and experience what you have. So I really wanted to say that. So the question this evening is, why can't we close the Charleston loophole? And while there have been at least, let me just say this, since that time, 2017, June 17, 2017, in the House, there have been 5 election cycles with the House of Representatives since that time, which means there are fewer and fewer of us who are still serving and recall that loss that we call the Emmanuel 9. And so I'm still there. So for me, this is personal, because I work with Senator Clemente Pinckney. And as a matter of fact, when those bellwether moments come in your life, you never forget what occurred during that time. I know there are a lot of events you can think of in history, but I will never forget something that I affectionately call the 24 days of amazing grace. But the evening that Senator Pinckney was assassinated, along with his parishioners, I had spoken to him at 3:00 in the cookie room, a room that's joined with the House and the Senate. This is where we meet in the middle. And he was having a late lunch around 3:00 p.m. And I said, Senator, are you having lunch late today? And he said, yeah, and after I do this, I've got to run to a church meeting. And I said, well, be safe on the road. And that was my last conversation with him, only to learn what had happened later. So where have we gone since that time? As I said, the House has changed 5 election cycles. Laura talked about the 398 pages of bills, but that really breaks down into 308 pieces of gun legislation since 2015. And it averages, I did the average by looking at it per year until now, about 50 bills a year, some a little more, some a little less. that year that happened, coming back from that, because that was the summer, that was the highest record. There were like 56 bills filed when we returned back to session that January. And so as we fast forward to this year, there have been 31 bills filed this year. So we're still passionate about it, even though some of those are kind of crazy, like Laura read out today, but we're still passionate, and we're still trying to find an answer to reduce gun violence in its entirety. And so I did something today because I knew that probably my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, our colleagues, would not be here. So I like to do my own question and answer, my little surveys, and I picked up the phone and called, and I'm not going to identify this person, but I did call a Republican. Because that's what I do when I'm at the State House. Why y'all won't pass this? Why you know? So I called one that I thought was pretty reliable, who always tells me the truth. I told him, I said, I've got to go to a panel discussion tonight about why can't we get the Charleston loophole closed? And I said, you're in the majority, and it's been that way for a while. So tell me, honestly, why can't we do this? And it really, y'all, boils down to politics. It's really politics. And he shared with me that the lobby of the National Rifle Association, that we call NRA, and the Palmetto gun rights, yeah, we know about them, which are very akin to the Freedom Caucus, yeah, their messaging and communication rules the day. He said to me, if you pull us off one by one, we're going to tell you, in like Laura's survey, yes, we agree with some moderate changes, some gun reforms, but nobody wants to go on record for that because it is not in their best interest politically. It would not be in their best interest to be here tonight. It is a zero-sum game if you are a Republican legislator in South Carolina. So they went on to share with me that, I said, well, tell me about this messaging and what is happening out there in your world. And so they said to me, they said, well, you know that every battle is won or lost for us in a primary. And we don't want to do anything that's going to conjure up that other side. That is, which in this case, let me just break this down. We have three distinct groups in the House. We have Republicans, we have the Freedom Caucus, and we have the Democratic Caucus. So between the Freedom Caucus and the GOP, that's what we call it, moderate, run-of-the-mill GOP, there's a faction there. And it's always the job of the Freedom Caucus to one-up the GOP during election cycles, the extreme, what we know, the MAGA. And they don't want to, even though they're in the majority, they don't want to turn that machine on. They don't want to turn on the machine of the NRA, which is extreme messaging, extreme financial monies, PACs, built into the election cycle. And so I said to this individual, though, I said, well, in 2015, there was no Freedom Caucus. And I'm here to tell you that because I was there. But we did have a czar of sorts, kind of the liaison to the National Rifle Association, who was in the House and kept a pulse of legislation and what we could do. But over time, all of that has gotten more extreme. So there is no benefit for them for gun reform or anything that looks like creating access to guns or the Second Amendment, their Second Amendment rights. So it has nothing to do with logic. I tell people that. That's why what we do inside the chambers is a little different than how you actually campaign, because that is what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So I said, well, okay. So I said, are you telling me then that the value to you and your colleagues is making more guns accessible? Because that's the opposite. So that's how you win what they think are their base of voters. And so voila, what do we have? And that's what we've had over time. The last 17 years now that I have served in the House. And I'll just share that gun reform and this question about guns is actually what one of the issues, like Congressman Clyburn talked about. You have to talk about a lot of other things on the campaign trail, but that is one of the issues that has propelled me into running for as a legislator. At the time, 17 years ago, the question was, do we allow 18-year-olds to have access to guns? The legislator who represented House District 23 at the time thought it was a great thing. Well, moms in District 23, mothers, called me and said, well, we need you to run for office. So I tell people this conversation about guns is an evolving conversation. It has gotten more extreme over time because more access means more power. More access means I get reelected, right? And the messaging is big messaging. I know you said, well, we got to talk to people one-on-one. Yes, we've got to do both. And I always tell people we're smart. We can multitask, right? But we need to know the reality of why in the South Carolina legislature we are not making progress on this issue. So I had a great time with my survey this afternoon because I wanted this to be really fresh. And let me just say this, that, our Constitution South Carolina Constitution does give 18-year-olds the right to have guns. So, it became a moot issue at that point. And I would also add that sometimes, with certain bills, they don't get past go because our colleagues feel like we already have something in place. And I'll just use the red flag law. This individual said to me, well, we already really have a red flag law. And I said, well, how you figure? And they said, well, when people go to court by judicial conditions of parole, a judge can say, well, you can no longer have a gun. I was like, oh, that's the way you're thinking about that. So sometimes in their mind, we already are doing some of the things they feel by policy that people are interested in or asking for. So with that, I'm going to sit down, allow my colleague to come and share his perspective, and I really look forward to having your questions tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. The joys of going last. Looks like Chandra said that. Chandra said that. But no, thank you so much, guys, for allowing me to come out and give me the opportunity to speak. I want to talk to you tonight, not just from the perspective of a legislator, but really from someone who really cares deeply deeply about what comes next for our communities, but also what's going to come next for our party. I've listened carefully to the comments that were made by Congressman Clyburn and my colleague, my desk mate, my go-to person, Chandra. And I've heard your comments about the Charleston loophole. And I'll be honest with you, every time I hear the word Charleston loophole, I don't think it gives the right bang that it should give. And I don't think, we actually frame the situation the way we ought to frame it. Because when you use the word loophole sounds just like a technicality. Loophole sounds like it was just somebody's oversight. But in reality, it was a systemic failure that led to the death of 9 people. That's not a loophole. In actuality, what we have in place legally now is a death sentence. And so I will from now on refer to this as the Charleston death sentence, formerly known as the Charleston loophole. The death sentence that was issued by delay and that was sealed by indifference. And so I'm asking you to join me. Let's frame this properly, because our messaging is what contributes to the clarity amongst our communities. Our messaging is what we're going to need to put forth to generate some conviction. And we are lacking some conviction in the state. And so here's what I want to suggest to you tonight. We know the history, and give you a chance to get to know me a little better. I aggravate my peers because I talk strategy all the time, because I think we need to be more strategic in what we're doing. And what I want to suggest to our party is that we got to consider the long game. Guys, I've thought long and hard about how we might change this. And I almost hate to admit this, but I kind of want us to imitate the Republicans. The Republicans have a tendency to take a long game to their strategy. They believe in working locally. They believe in working persistently. And of course, they believe in working strategically. I think we should do the same. I've studied how I take the term nerd as a term of endearment. Stacey refers to me as professor. But I've studied them. And I've studied how they chip away at policies sometimes for decades. Not with statewide sweeping takeovers. They're able to do that now because they have the numbers, but by planting seeds. Planting seeds in our school boards, city councils, zoning commissions. That's the long game. I tell my constituents all the time, quit asking me to hit a home run. Just be glad when I get on first base. Because you don't know how hard it is in the state to even get up to bat, let alone on first base. That's the long game. And see, I want us to adopt that philosophy. But here's the differentiating factor. We got to do it with a conscience. That's why I want to talk about some things that I think we ought to do. And I'm smiling because I'm getting ready to stick my neck out a little bit. I'm proposing, although Chandra and I have the ability to sit in Columbia, I'm proposing that we take a local approach, because I think that's where we might have the best opportunity to win. I want to talk to you tonight about a policy that I believe is both legally sound, but also morally clear. And in this case, we'll no longer be seen as the party that's reacting, but the party that's building momentum. I want to talk to you tonight about a city ordinance. And I hope my colleagues that are in the city council won't be offended by me maybe overstepping just a little bit. I've given some thought to what I would call the delayed transfer ordinance. So let's talk about that a little bit. This ordinance here in the city of Greenville would simply say this: everything everybody wants said, that no licensed gun dealer in the city of Greenville may transfer a firearm until the FBI background check is complete and approved. Now, as radical as that may sound, I'm here to assure you tonight, it is not radical. It's absolutely not radical. I've studied what other states have done, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, and watch this, even Florida. They all require clearance before release. So the precedent has been set. Now we just need the courage here to do it on a more local level. Here in Greenville, the ordinance would apply to we have approximately about 35 licensed gun dealers in and around the city. And so with 35, that won't put some exorbitant weight on our administration. What we can have out of that, we can have a focused, manageable policy, not some sweeping disruption, but a targeted safeguard. Solutions. My pastoral hat almost kicked in. I was about to tell y'all to repeat after me, and I will. Somebody say solutions. Enough with the talk. Let's have some solutions. Absolutely. And listen, the current makeup of our city council gives us our best shot to pass this. We know it'll be wishful thinking in the county right now. And Chandra and I absolutely know it'll be wishful thinking at the state. But why not begin the momentum right here in our backyard, where we may have the makeup? We just may have the makeup to make this thing happen, where we're not dreaming, but we're positioning ourselves to act. I don't know about you. I'm so sick of talking. I want us to make something happen. And so let's dig a little deeper in this, and then I'll move out the way for our questions. So whenever you start to pass an ordinance, the question that ought to come up, is this: how are we going to enforce this thing? And so I believe, and I know you do as well, I believe that our laws should be enforceable and not just symbolic. And so this ordinance would be built on the tools that the city already controls. And that's in business licensing and compliance. Gun dealers will be required to document. Let me stop right there. Even before I say that, they're just going to be asked to do what they're already asked to do. They'll be asked to document the date the background check was submitted and the date the sale was completed. They're supposed to do that already. But now we're asking that the city to have some oversight over that. And if those dates don't align with the FBI approval, that triggers a penalty. And so we're not talking about harassing our small business owners. We're not talking about additional red tape. We're talking about setting a standard, which is how we should do if we are going to lead. And if a firearm ends up in the wrong hands and the trace points back to a premature sale, we'll have both the authority and the documentation to deal with it. You see, this is the kind of policy that shows the public what responsible leadership looks like. It's measured, it's enforceable, and it's built for real impact. So now let's talk about the elephants in the room. How will they fight me, you, us on this? Here's what I know will come up. They will say that the city is in violation, it violates the state preemption. Or in other words, the city is trying to supersede the power of the state. Well, let me tell you what the state law actually says. The state law actually says that when it comes to passing any type of regulation related to guns, that you cannot regulate the transfer, the ownership, the possession, the carrying, or transportation of a firearm. What I just proposed to you, what I'm just pitching to you, violates none of that. Violates absolutely none of that, because it regulates timing of transfer through local business licensing. And I know that would be this is going to be the case that this is what we'd have to go to court over right here. But I think there's enough precedence that we could win, that we could absolutely win. And right now, it seems like our court system might be our only saving grace. And so as long as we have some sensible people on the bench, we need to take full advantage of that. There'll be others that'll say that this is bad for business, that we're somehow attacking small businesses. Well, this ordinance will not be punishing good business. It actually rewards responsible business. And I would say to small business owners that if your business model depends on you skipping verification, then you're not just selling a product. You're starting to contribute to the lack of safety in our community. And last but not least, the Holy Grail. They'll say it attacks the Second Amendment. Well, if you listen carefully, and then when we talk about it later, you'll see that the Second Amendment is not on trial with this because the FBI already requires. They already prohibit felons, they prohibit domestic abusers, they prohibit certain mental health cases from owning guns. We're just trying to put something in place to make sure that the federal law is complied with. We're not creating something new. We would just be creating a way to enforce it before it's too late again. My final call to you, my final call to action to you is this, and just speaking to you, my party, this is really bigger than one policy. It really is. This is about showing what moral leadership rooted in strategy can look like in South Carolina. This might be the way we finally flip some seats. This might be the way we finally get the independents to decide that we finally have some leaders who are thinking some things through. This might be the way we finally get the fence riders and also some of the moderate Republicans that feel like we've gone too far, and they are out there. They want some balance in government. They want bills to be able to be vetted properly. They want sensible conversation and legislation. They want democracy. And so we got to figure out how to make sure we are the leaders in that. We're not waiting. We cannot afford to wait for some national wave or some legislative miracle. Passing in the state would be just that, a miracle. I'm asking us that we begin to plant the change in the places where we already lead, and that's right here in our backyards. We can begin to finally show, or once again show, or increase our showing of our people and our neighborhoods and our communities that they can trust us. They can trust us to lead the state again, that Democrats can actually govern locally, that we can build coalitions, we can talk across the aisles, and we can actually deliver common sense legislation. So I'm offering this, not as some symbolic gesture, I'm sick of that, but as a signal that South Carolina Democrats have leaders who are ready to govern differently and leaders who are ready to not build just a party, but good God, let's build a safer South Carolina so our children can stop taking these drills and be shaken to their core and wondering where we are when they're trying to figure out who's going to protect me. That should never be a question that beautiful little almost 8-year-old ever has to worry about. So thank you.
So now we're going to have the question period. I'm going to ask Charles Morris. He is our third vice president of the County Democratic Party, to come up and or stand back there and bring our people who have said when they signed up that they wanted to speak, and then we'll have questions that are submitted today. So Charles, over to you.
Thank you, Representative Jones, for being here today. It's almost like what the both of you said makes too much sense. We had, as Laura said, a few people indicated they just wanted to make a comment, got questions. So I have a couple of those in the interest of time. We just try to put your comment. Is Richard Bocock here? Yes.
Hello. I'll try to make this quick. I'm quite sure who's going to do this, but I do have some comments and a question for sure. Melody,
Right here.
right there. See you. Okay, do this as quickly as I can. The fact that our policymakers have done nothing in South Carolina to close the Charleston loophole is a moral disgrace, an outrageous show of lack of empathy for the families who have lost their loved ones and who will mourn that loss for the rest of their lives. Any lawmaker who would use our Second Amendment rights as an excuse, and that's all it is, for turning their backs on the impact of this tragedy, does not deserve to lead the citizens, or should be disqualified from holding public office. In South Carolina, the deck is stacked against advancing common sense gun laws. for any reason, including to protect society from people who should, by established legal standards, be prohibited from owning a gun. So what do? How do we reach people who clearly have broken moral compass, or are so beholden to corporate interests that no amount of human suffering will convince them to take legislative action against gun violence? What message will resonate with our policymakers that is far better to stop a person with a demented self of self-righteousness for purchasing a gun than it is to simply let that person kill other people for no other reason than they don't happen to look like him? Well, it goes without saying that one thing our legislative majority does understand is the impact of the almighty dollar. And when that impact affects their personal wallets, even the NRA is hard pressed to argue against the actions to stop financial bleeding. Amazing how the color of blood has to be green before some people take notice. South Carolina consistently ranks among the top states for gun deaths. This current ranking in the 12th national, that may have changed since I wrote this. Gun homicides in South Carolina between 2013 and 2022 outpaced homicides nationally by 13%. With suicides increased by 9% in the same period, highlighting our state's public health and safety crisis. Gun violence and its aftermath cost the state of South Carolina $14 billion a year, $372 million of which comes directly from South Carolina taxpayers, or about $2,716 per resident. Costs related to emergency services, healthcare, law enforcement, and judicial processes account for this cost. I'm a marketing person. I look for ways to try to convince people to do things, maybe in some cases they don't want to. But I really appreciate the talk I heard today about strategy, taking a look at what we can do from a communication standpoint. We must find a way to talk to constituents, that 90% that believe in common sense gun laws, to get them to convince their legislators, the people they put in office, to change their minds about the laws that we have before us today. That's the only way I think, in many respects, there is going to be a change. Now, can we get a Democrat in office to replace those individuals? It's unlikely, but it could happen. But nonetheless, we'd like to see individuals that are willing to step forward and pressure their legislators to make a change. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. And please, just a reminder, in the interest of getting as many comments and questions in as possible, let's try and keep it to 60 seconds. Is Martha Shearer here? Jay Bergen? Marshall Roper? No. Mr. Bergen doesn't want to speak. Marshall Roper? Christy Dunn? No, Evelyn is down. That one was, we got, no, Evelyn is.
Thank you, and thank you, legislators. It's really, and to know that he's working so hard for us against such outstanding odds. I just wanted to, mention a few of the bills that were put forth by the House Democrats. I believe they're Democrats. I could have a mistake here. But it's just a statement about the ridiculousness of these bills being voted down. We're not, these are mostly in committee, but there's House Bill 3283, guns on campus. Who would want that? House Bill 3041, prohibition of selling guns to persons whose names are on the terrorist watch list. Who would vote against that? House Bill 3040, a bill against drive-by shootings. House Bill 3180, transporting firearms, a bill against transporting firearms. It just seems so outstanding that they're just voting, after money. There's no common sense to it. So thank you for the work you do every day.
So we're gonna get to our first question here. So it says the 2023 law, there were 9,000 paid background checks. We're gonna get records. 71 sales went to likely prohibited. The 71 guns that have been used to commit acts of gun violence. And how do we do a better job of getting this data to the public? Because knowledge is power. Being chivalrous.
Well, I think it starts with what Congressman Clyburn said. Well, this happens. We have to have these conversations. Small groups, living rooms, neighborhood meetings, and then the big message. Democratic chair, because it needs to be an alternate message. Right now, I am not seeing the alternate message around this subject. So when we're quiet, the public doesn't have anything to contrast. So that would be my suggestion. But it has to be intentional. And I don't want to use the word organic, but grassroots, so that it can bubble up to grass tops and then to our political leaders. The other thing is we need to take it to the masses. We need public service announcements. We need to let people know in a place where they're actually watching and listening, the radio, the TV. If we don't go and ask for public service, some of them don't even cost anything, but we're not asking to put our messages out there. So we need to ask and put our message so that the masses can hear. People would be offended by those numbers, but they don't know.
And lastly, we gotta get outside of our bubbles. We gotta stop just talking to each other. Because right now we're competing with the algorithms and Fox News. And the algorithms and Fox News are telling the people what they want to hear. And if you have any conversation, as Chandra alluded to earlier, oftentimes we pull our peers to the side, everybody's sensible one-on-one. It's that groupthink thing that gets things off kilter. But most of your neighbors who are supporting Republican agendas, a lot of this stuff right here that really crosses party line interests. That's why we kind of like, who wouldn't vote for that? Who wouldn't push for that? They have no idea it's been put out there. Because they're stuck in their echo chamber. And I understand how we want to be with each other because it's tough these days. But we've got to get outside of this and we got to start talking to people who don't believe or think like we think and start picking them off one by one by having some sensible, logical, make sense conversation. And I think those are possible.
Thank you. It sounds like you need to be louder and have some conversations. This question is, it sounds like the bottom line is voting, but you could say it's not a lot of things, it's money, lobbying. What can be done to control the flow of money? What other incentives are there for sensible ones that you just mentioned?
How can we control the money? But it is. It's the old adage, guys, of follow the money. But you also might want to add to that, follow the ambition. Many of our colleagues, we know this, they are constantly auditioning for DC. That's why they can go against polling. That's why we can talk all day about 80%, 90% agree with this, that, or the other. You're not their audience. They're auditioning for their next job, their cabinet position, trying to get the attention of the orange guy. And he pays quite a bit of attention to South Carolina. And he makes calls to South Carolina. And so our folks are playing that game. I don't know if we can stop the money, because in order to stop the money, we gotta get in position to change the legislation. That's at the end of the day. But what we can do, and I think what was demonstrated masterfully when Barack Obama won, is that there's enough grassroots money to make sure that we can have marketing, to make sure we can get our messaging out, to make sure that we can support our candidates, to find good candidates, to build a capable bench of candidates. We've got to be, if my word again, strategic, and get everybody to $5, $25. You know, so as a collective, we'll have strength to compete against the oligarchs who will now run things. We've got to have that kind of effort amongst ourselves.
One of the challenges that I did not mention, but it's real, is redistricting. You know, we have districts drawn that are Republican safe districts. And that's why I go back to what I shared with you. It's about Freedom Caucus versus moderate GOP. So what is the strategy there? Well, I can come up with one. And we've done it here in Greenville County when we wanted an MLK omnibus. We educated folks, so they're Democrats, they're independents in those districts, to vote for the lesser of the evil of who might just be reasonable enough to pick up the phone when you call, to listen to you about these issues. Now, will it change? No, but we won't have as extreme colleagues to work with the next cycle. But we could also focus on, there's still a few swing districts out there. And as Laura always says, the concentration should be to flip one damn seat. You know, we can just get one. We're gonna be happy. Right now it's 36, we want 37. You know, it's just, you know, it is, don't think that's not lost on us, you know, it's the little games, like you said, to work steadily at changing the dynamics in which we work. So I offer that as
Thank you, Representative. Next one will also be for the two of you. Can one of you give us a time when you succeeded in getting legislation through in spite of great opposition? And how did you do it?
well, I had done any gun legislation, and I have sponsored gun legislation. I had a 10-year-old at the time that, in the story you shared, went over his friend's house. And boys would be going to 10 and 11, they playing around, rolling around on the floor themselves and going underneath the bed. And so that was my entree into gun legislation. And it simply called for the proper store with the firearms. But the question was, how do you get legislation passed in the body that we're in? And I will say this, it's all about relationships. At the end of the day, those of us who serve, we must speak with authority, we must be credible, and we must galvanize support for our business. And a part of that is working with leadership. Leadership says what goes, it's done. Let's realize that. And for me, I try to anticipate what the opposition is
and tackle that before we get into the situation, whether it's on the floor. It needs to be handled in committee, because it is impossible, once it gets on the floor, to build a coalition toward your bill. And so, and that includes coalition inside the house, and I mean, in the chamber and outside the chamber. So there could be various stakeholders, there could be lobbyists who help support the bill as well, and I would work with anybody who sees merit in what I'm trying to do for the people of South Carolina or Greenville County when it comes to trying to put their bills back in state. I've had a few. Unfortunately,
Well, Chandra had to console me this year. I got 3 votes. I did, we made it through committee, made it through the main committee, subcommittee, the main committee, and made it all the way to the floor to be tabled. The last week of session. And, I never told you this, but, I was hoping I was getting ready to beat your advice, but she tries to temper my naivete and my zeal and say that, but it normally takes about 6 years under the current structure. You did, and she's absolutely right, you go research it. And I was, okay, I'm gonna get a field pass in my 3rd year, and I get to tell Chandra I get it, and yeah. I fumbled on the 2-yard line.
Sorry, Representative Jones, you're there 5 minutes. That's what happens, right?
that's right, that's fine.
I do want to piggyback, if I may, especially for Chandra, if you have as many relationships in the house as probably anybody does. Is there a faction in the GOP that would be willing to go on the record, to have the courage to cojones to step up to the plate and actually work with the Democratic caucus on common sense gun solutions?
Yeah, sorry.
No, there no case for them. Want to see it again, there is no sole game for them standing up for gun legislation. Now, I believe in miracles, I really do. And as we look and we started this conversation talking about the 99 and the loophole. It is unfortunate that we have a tragedy in order to take down the Confederate flag. But that came out of that. And we tried everything. So what was the difference? Yes, there was a tragedy, but the leadership said, this will not stand. This will not stand anymore. Starting with Governor Haight. I give her that credit. Talking with her leadership, the other Republican leadership. Congressman Clyburn was a part of those discussions. And it was still difficult. When the bill came, it took the Senate 2 hours to debate the issue of bringing down the flag. And that's because they lost one of their own. It took us 13 hours in the House. And we almost thought it wasn't going to happen. But as our colleague said the other day, the Holy Spirit moved. And a Republican female. And we were all crying. And the leader said, it's time. Let's take this vote. And that's exactly how it happened. Because it was going to be very difficult the next day. The Ku Klux Klan and the Black Panthers were forced to show up next day. And I kept saying, we got to get this flag down. Because if it's still up tomorrow, I don't know what's going to happen in the state house. But sometimes a miracle will happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen with this, but we keep strategizing. We keep being deliberate. We keep speaking about it. So let's not give up.
Thank you, Representative Jones. This is kind of an overall question that we've touched on, but what are the solutions besides just introducing legislation, and how do we get more people to these meetings, these town halls, maybe for more people who don't think like us, and think most people in this room are on the same trend. But how do we get more people into the discussion in our communities?
Well, I think everybody's heard the clear message that there is this disconnect between legislation and the people. All the polling reveals that. Somewhere there's also a disconnection between the people and the ballot box. And so if we can get, let me back up. You know, people always say we live in a red state, right? I tell people we live in an apathetic state. It's not really red, we just have 500,000 plus people who don't show up to vote. And so if we can get a concerted effort to, and I know we're trying, but we gotta figure something out to get more engagement, get more people showing up at the ballot box. I think the color of the state will begin to shift. We'll definitely be able to flip some seats. We'll definitely be able to flip some seats and be able to position ourselves to pass the legislation. But that's really what it's gonna take. When the people decide, enough's enough. But as long as the people are okay, as long as the other side can gin people up with one issue like abortion and make them turn a blind eye to gun control. Because that's really what happens. They find the hot button and they'll say, well, I'll be a one issue person. And so I gotta still vote with the Republican Party, even though I don't agree with this over here. But this is my main thing. They are very tactical at finding out what's the main thing that'll make people push other stuff to the side and still vote for them. We've got to figure that out. We've got to get the people who have given up on the political process back into the game. And I think we can make some things happen. And that's just not wishful thinking. The data supports that. And so when we do that, we make a concerted effort of that, we can flip some days.
Flip some days.
Real quick, Representative Jones, from that second question, the city of Paul.
Thank you, Representative. You're correct, and Senator Clyburn said this himself. You gotta do more than town hall meetings. You gotta get local meetings. With that said, you gotta go to the people.
Yeah.
I mean, I live in a neighborhood, we don't see a lot of people there. And there's plenty of spaces where you can come talk to the people. In my neighborhood, we don't have gun violence. The next neighbor over, they have a shooting every Friday night. Kids are laying in the floor. They can't play. So we got to get to them. But you're gonna find out a different conversation when you talk to them young people. But the first thing they tell you, I'm not giving up my guns for nobody. So these churches and big family life centers, you need to open your doors and have this conversation. You can't just have a Sunday service be shutting people out in the community. You gotta invite me. Hear what the young people got to say. They have a different view of guns than we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just wanted to address the questions come up a few times. What can we do? When Dorothy and I have lots of Dorothy and I have lots of ideas about what you can do. I'm the leader of the Greenville, the Central Greenville group. Dorothy is South Greenville. We are co-sponsors with the 10 women for this event. And I'm going to start a little basic. I'm not going to talk long. I'm going to start a little basic, but the first thing you've got to do if you want to help with this issue is educate yourself. It's not hard to do. Educate yourself. You've taken the first step by being here tonight. Align yourself with an organization that can get you information. Moms Demand Action is the one we recommend. But there are certainly other organizations out there, Brady United, Sandy Hook Promise, Giffords. There's lots of places to go and get information. Once you're informed, learn to articulate your position. Make it an elevator speech. You all have heard about what an elevator speech is. I've come to the conclusion tonight, listening to you guys, that our first meeting in the fall, I think we're going to work on our elevator speeches. And we get a chance to say to somebody why we care about this issue, we're gonna be able to do it, and we're gonna be able to do it quickly and eloquently. Once you're informed and you're comfortable about talking about it, then what do you do? Well, that's when you pick up the phone and you start calling your legislator. That's not a hard thing to do either. You, probably everybody in this room has done that a little bit, but if you haven't, you just dial until you get someone who will listen and who will take down your opinion on something. How will you know when there's something specifically that you need to make a call about? You can very easily watch the South Carolina, I think it's, scstatehouse.gov, and you can see the bills, but the shortcut is to align yourself with an organization like ours, and we'll tell you when there's a bill that you need to talk about, or when there's something you need to voice your opinion on. There's other ways to advocate. Voting, we've talked about that a lot. That's gonna be the number one way. It sounds like it's gonna change things. Attend events. We need to be very visual. We need to raise the awareness of the community. We do things like attend Wear Orange Weekend. I don't know how many of you attended a Wear Orange event. Dorothy, or even our group sponsored 2 different Wear Orange events 2 weekends ago. We marched through downtown Greenville from Unity Park to Cleveland Park. You can attend events like we have Advocacy Day in March every year. March, we had it in January last year. We did a road trip to the Mother Emanuel Church. There are ways that we can be very visual on these topics. There's ways. A small thing is join the moms. If you're a Moms Demand Action member, you can join our rapid response team, and you'll be told with an email or a text message, we need you in the gallery, in the Senate tomorrow, there's a vote, and we need red t-shirts or whatever. So there are lots of ways. And last but not least, I'll always say this, the easiest way you can advocate and make guns safer is lock them up. And make sure everybody you know who owns a gun hears you say, lock it up. Make sure everybody that your child goes to play with, that your grandchild goes to play with. Make sure when your teenage daughter goes to babysit somebody's children, make sure the guns are locked up. And if we all start having this conversation one at a time, maybe there'll be a trickle down effect. It doesn't work with economics, but maybe it'll work with this, right? Thanks.
Okay, well, I guess we are out of questions. And we don't have anybody else who wanted to speak, right? We do have a couple people. Okay. 60 seconds, though.
What happens to gun dealers what happened to the gun dealer that sold down the road that gun? Cause he was outside the law, wasn't he? He didn't, right?
No, that was close.
Let me answer the question for you. Oh, that's a whole other answer too. Ma'am, I'm from Charleston. Yeah. I'm a friend of Senator Duncan. I'm a pastor as well. So this is what happened. He didn't break the law. He had on the 3rd day, if he chose not to sell him the gun, he didn't have to sell it to him. But he chose to make the money. So therefore, he's not in, he didn't break any law. On the 5th day, it came back and told him not to sell the gun. But he waited 3 days. And on the 3rd day, he sold the weapon. Now, here's what I will say. That's what it's all about, money to them. But these are real people that were loved, and they have been sacrificed because someone else wants money or power. Or
hello, everyone. First, I want to say hello to the panel and thank you all for coming to speak. My name is Tony. I'm the person that Miss Melanie McFadden spoke about, getting shot several times. I got shot 9 times, but the doctors told my mom I got shot 10, so we go back and forth. So, my question is though, is that with repeat offenders, why do they still be able to get guns legally? Cause I know of a repeat offender who has a gun, and I don't know if it's a time limit in between, but I just wanna know why, because the person who shot me is a repeat offender.
If the person is a felon, then they're prohibited from buying the gun. But if they're not a felon, and if they weren't convicted, like in your case, and if they haven't been convicted yet, because we're believing that they will, that person is eligible to receive a gun. When you go and have your background checked, the NCIC, it allows you to purchase a weapon if you're not a felon, or if you don't have a flag that's saying that you're mentally ill or domestic abuse.
And because the brother took the charge for me to, yeah.
And it is a straw purchase where someone bought the gun for someone else and they put it in their hands.
Yeah, thank you.
I was a part of the bombers for a long time. I called that gun owner shortly after that incident. And he told me that he would not sell a gun again without full waiver period. That's what he told me. And I can't say that that was not the case. But I did call him and I said, you know, I know that you did this. He said, you're gonna wait 10 days. That's it.
The gunshot.
The gunshot over come back to us.
You got one more question.
Hey, so I'm gonna be part of like the newer generation that has to like, I guess, do legislation and do this, it's one day, right? My question is just like, how do you talk to, especially these like newer ones that are like really into the MAGA and stuff? I have friends who are kind of like that a little bit, but I'm just curious with the ones that are like politically engaged, how do you have those conversations, especially as like Democrat stuff.
Chandra nicknamed me the Freedom Caucus Whisperer. And that's because they all sat around us and they were eager to espouse their ideology. And so I spent a good little time trying to understand them. And so I think what we have to do, and I really implore the young men that are coming through, we have to build relationships. Even with people that sometimes make us cringe a little bit, because if you talk to them long enough, they'll tell you how to talk to them. They'll tell you what the issue is. They'll tell you who their enemies are. And you'll be able to sometimes pull apart some of their logic. Now, you can even get some of them to agree with you. But I tell people now, they eat their own. They do. I think that even though we have little numbers, I honestly think it may be harder to be a Republican right now. Because they walk around in total fear. And so even though you may be able to reason with them, they know there's going to be a tremendous amount of backlash if they don't toe the party line. And so somehow, I don't have the magic pill right now, but somehow we have to be able to give really our moderate Republicans, I don't know if MAGA is a lost cause right now, but our more moderate Republicans, somehow we have to figure out how to give them some cover. So that and which will hopefully produce some courage for them to make the stand. But right now, they feel like any time they align themselves with us, they're going to be primaries. They're going to be primary, and there's going to be tons of money thrown at them, and their families are going to be attacked. And so there's a great level of fear that we're all against, right? Just to be honest.
I have actually sat in a meeting with a senator in this state from South Carolina. And I was in Washington, D.C. at the time. And I took a picture of my loved ones and passed it across the conference room table and said, this is my loved ones. What are we going to do to prevent this from happening to other people's loved ones in South Carolina? And he said, I vote for the party. And I said, This is my answer and I mean it, and I'll say it to him every time I see him. The party did not elect you. The people of South Carolina elected you. And you're supposed to represent all of us, all of your constituents, whether they agree with you or not. You're supposed to do what's best for the people of this state. But he instead slid me my picture again and said, I vote for the party.
Such courage. Yeah.
I'll say I was here for a month, man. Oh, got my shirt on.
All right, everybody. Well, I want to thank our special guests, our speakers, Representative Clyburn, Representative Dillard, Representative Jones, Melody. Thank you so much. Excellent. Let's have a round of applause. Not just for spending 90 minutes with us tonight, but for fighting every single day for something decent to come out of Columbia, which, you know, I don't know it, I don't feel it, I don't see it, but I know intellectually how hard they're working at it and the environment that they're doing it in, and it's unbelievable. So before we go, I want to give everybody an assignment. Also, let's have a Republican representative. Unless we're very, very lucky. I want you to go home, look up their name, look up their address, and call or write their office, and tell them how disgusted you are they were not here tonight to participate in this conversation. They are your elected representatives. And while maybe that won't change the dynamic, we should hold their feet to the fire and make them feel a little pain, because eventually you all have to vote. Sooner or later, we're going to get to the point where there are more voters against them than are slaves to pull the R when we get the message out effectively. And they need to be afraid of it. So that's your assignment for tonight. And I want to thank you all for coming. Yes, Bridget.
You told that response. Like, ask for it.
Oh, yeah, you can do that? They do it? Well, Bridget Watson says, ask for a response back. And if you get one, send me a text. So I want to thank you all for coming today. I look forward to working with you in the future. The Democratic women is a big issue for us, and we're going to be working hard on making a difference. So thanks again. Give yourselves a hand and drive safely going home.